Jean Piaget was a Swiss psychologist who was well known for his work on child development. He theorized how learners interact with their environment and develop reasoning and knowledge. As per his theory, cognitive development is categorized into four distinct stages. In Jean Piaget's theory of cognitive development, the four stages are sensorimotor stage, pre-operational, concrete operational, and formal operational stages. Now, sensorimotor stage is from birth to 2 years. At this age, the child is still learning to control his own senses and motor skills. That is, the child is learning to understand what is it that he is seeing or hearing, and also to control his own body. And this is also the beginning of cognitive understanding because the child is still very young. Next, the pre-operational stage is from 2 to 7 years. And this is when the child has slightly grown up and is in an ego-centric state. Ego-centric means the child thinks that he or she is the most important person in the world, and everything else around him exists only for his purpose or his usage. And they also believe in animism. That is, they think everything around them has life. For example, if the child hurts himself against a wall and the child is crying, so what parents do is they beat the wall and say, I have punished the wall now. So the child will be happy. That's because the child thinks that the wall is alive, and because the parents are punishing the wall, the child is happy. So that is animism. And the child also has difficulty in understanding conservation. For example, if you give the child one chocolate and the child is crying that he or she wants 2 chocolates, and then you take the same chocolate, break it into 2 pieces and give it back, and the child thinks that now he has 2 chocolates. So that's because they don't understand what is conservation. And then they also develop symbolism. That is, now they can use language and words to represent things and objects and people. And they also develop a sense of moral realism. That is, at this stage, they know that there is something called right, something called wrong, right? Because in the previous stage, they will do anything. Whereas here, they know that there are a few things that they should not do. And next comes the concrete operational stage, which is from 7 to 12 years. Now, in some books, it is written as 7 to 11 years, which is also correct. So that is a minor difference. You should not get worried about that. Now, in the concrete operational stage, the child learns how to use concrete objects and situations for logical thinking. That is, if you ask the child to solve some problem, if it is a physical problem represented by physical objects, the child is able to solve, such as a puzzle. And the child also understands the concept of conservation. That is, now if you break the same chocolate into 2 pieces and give it to the child will not be convinced, because now the child understands what is conservation. And the child is also able to do grouping in and ordering using various attributes. For example, in the previous stage, if the child was just using one attribute, that is, if the child was just segregating a group of blocks only on the basis of colors, right? Now the child can segregate or separate the group of objects on various parameters, such as all red blocks, all green blocks, all red colored balls. So that way the child can use 2 or multiple parameters to separate or group objects. And finally, the formal operational stage. This is pretty much very close to adulthood, right? And here the child is able to understand abstract thought. Now, the child can solve mental puzzles and not just physical puzzles. And the child is also able to deal with complex situations. So these are the 4 stages of Jean Piaget's theory of cognitive development. Next, let us look at some criticism of Jean Piaget's theory of cognitive development. The first was about his research methodology, because it was relatively unstructured, which means that other researchers who were trying to replicate Piaget's experiments or validate his results could not do so. So Piaget's experimental results themselves were questioned. And this theory of cognitive development was based on his observations of his own 3 children. If he was observing his own children, then there is a possibility of bias. And the other children in Piaget's experiments were all from well-educated families of high socio-economic status. So while his theories might be correct for children coming from such backgrounds, what about children coming from other backgrounds? Do his theories hold good for children coming from, say, working class backgrounds? Now, that was also a question that was raised. And Piaget says that there are 4 stages of development: sensorimotor, pre-operational, concrete operational, and formal operational. And he also says that children display some aspects of development in each of these stages. However, other researchers said that some children possess many of these abilities at an earlier stage itself, or an earlier age itself. So, is Piaget's classification of these 4 different stages as per different ages, is that classification correct? Are those age groups correct? That was also a question that was raised by many researchers. And Vygotsky also criticized Piaget's theory. Vygotsky says that Piaget's theories don't take into account social and cultural influences on development. And Vygotsky also says that biological and cultural development are interlinked. That is, biological development cannot happen without cultural influences and vice versa.